hell's going on? What's happening?
We are talking Attack of the Unknown. This one is directed and co-written by Brandon Slagle. Slagle actually was the man behind the recent nun horror movie, The Dawn. And this one stars Richard Grieco, Robert Lasardo, and a small appearance from Tara Reid. I would best describe this movie as Alien Assault on Precinct 13. Maybe is the best way I would describe it. Low budget indie movie, science fiction actioner. So it focuses on this group of SWAT police officers, of where Richard Grieco plays Vernon, one of the officers, and our kind of main character. And they are on a mission to take out Robert Lasardo's character Hades, and he's like this crime boss, and he's having a meeting with various different kind of criminal organisations in this particular meet-up, etc. And the SWAT team is sent there to kind of take him down. And the movie starts with this this action sequence. Big shootout, and Hades is taken into custody. However, before he is safely delivered to his destination, we have an alien attack. Now, this takes place in Los Angeles, though we are led to believe the alien attacks are happening across America. And it's up to this group of SWAT police officers who have now holed up in this jail to try and fend off these alien attackers that seem to have a thirst for human blood. Almost space vampires, you might say. What will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So first of all, let's talk about what works in this movie. This has a retro feel to it in two areas, nonetheless. Now, this may or may not be a good thing, depending on how you look at it, but I was reminded of the action science fiction movies of the 90s. The sort of stuff you'd get straight to video. And I was a big fan of those films, but it definitely had that kind of feel to it. We have, macho kind of police officers, very kind of like mouthy kind of bad guys, aliens and kind of like man-in-suit practical effects with kind of spaceships flying overhead, this stuff like that. Shootouts with bad guys kind of running into gunfire, things like this. Definitely a 90s feel to it. But it also has a somewhat of a 1950s feel to it. We'll come on to that again, but that's specifically in regards to the aliens. Very reminiscent of, I think it's Attack of the Cybermen, but also many sort of kind of science fiction movies of the 50s. So if you are a fan of kind of retro science fiction movies, certainly B movies at least, then you may want to check this one out. So next thing, I think I was very impressed with the CGI effects here. Now, I think this in this instance, it's actually the CGI which is the strongest point in regards to effects. The practical effects maybe are a little weaker here, and again, we'll come on to that. But for such a lower budget movie, the visual effects here, and there are a reasonable amount, I thought were very, very impressive. And to be honest with you, quite astounding for a low budget movie to have some shots here that are, that are comparable to kind of like big budget blockbusters. They're not all fantastic, but there's a lot of them I think look very, very impressive. I was also impressed with the scale of the movie. Not only is this kind of, some kind of major alien invasion, we do see lots of kind of reactionary shots from extras, people who just kind of see the aliens coming down, and we're kind of getting shots from the suburbs, things like this. So, you do find that there's an attempt here to world build to a certain degree, and a lot of kind of lower budget B movies are guilty of not really doing that. So I appreciate the fact that this movie does actually have just, a couple of kind of shots here and there of different people kind of reacting to it, with also a fairly large cast. And also this movie does have a variety of locations. So on a technical level, I've got to say this movie was pretty proficient. I also quite like Richard Grieco here. I thought he was actually quite, quite down to earth here. And there's actually a couple of the other kind of the SWAT officers. The kind of like the main female one, I thought she looks very kind of military. I thought she was cast very well. And there was an Asian gentleman as well who was probably my favourite character. It's a supporting role, but you know, I thought I really kind of quite enjoyed his character. Quite a kind of sardonic type of attitude. You know, he has a cool look about him as well. So I actually kind of quite like some of the cast here. Okay, so maybe what doesn't work. Okay, I touched upon it, but the aliens themselves, I feel, are maybe the weakest aspect of this movie, or one of the weaker aspects. So I've likened them to 50s style aliens, but there's a number of issues that we have here. So considering that I think there's some fairly impressive CGI here, the actual practical man in suit costumes clearly obviously inspired by Giger's Alien. But to be honest with you, they're not particularly impressive. They wear kind of helmets that really just look like they're sitting on someone's head rather than kind of like being attached and things like that. But they really do look like 1950s kind of like aliens, again, specifically from, I think it's Attack of the Sorcerermen. The aliens also move comically slowly. So they really, but they're slower than zombies. This is how bad this is. They really do not seem very threatening because they just seem to waddle along. I get the impression the actors can't see where they're going. So they're just kind of moving on very, very slowly. And you know, they're able to kind of creep up on our kind of heroes and our protagonists and stuff like that. But they move so comically slowly, you just simply can't believe that these aliens are able to essentially attack Earth and ultimately become somewhat kind of successful. The alien suits themselves are a little bit of a mixed bag. There is an attempt, I would say, to have some variety in the aliens. When we see them taking off the masks, there's actually not just kind of one generic look, which I thought was quite good, but I don't know if it was particularly impressive kind of practical makeup here, to be honest with you. The other thing I would have to say, as much as I feel this movie is actually fairly proficient on a technical level, the one technical area where I feel this movie lets itself down, outside of kind of some of maybe the practical effects, is I think the action sequences are fairly not particularly well shot. So let me explain a little further. It kind of goes hand in hand in a way with what I said about these aliens moving very kind of slowly, because the action sequences are very low octane. They're very unexciting, not particularly engaging, not particularly visceral, and seem somewhat kind of lackadaisical in their kind of their nature. They're certainly not thrilling gun battles and combat sequences. You know, we have this kind of sequence at the beginning of the movie before the aliens turn up, where we have this kind of the cops versus these these criminals and stuff like that. And again, it just seems very low budget kind of B movies. People, gangsters kind of running out in open spaces, getting shot down by the police. People unloading, rifles and barely of being able to hit anything. Things like this. And just not particularly exciting. So I feel the action sequences here, I don't know if they were maybe filmed by a second unit director or something like that, but they needed some work, because unfortunately it undoes some of the kind of the excitement maybe brought on by the premise of this movie. And as I say, it looks quite impressive in its scale, but it's let down by some very, very generically shot action sequences. And again, when we get to our kind of aliens, they really do not seem very threatening. And ultimately, all the combat is really kind of ground-based. We don't really see, aeroplanes and kind of spaceships and things like that. We see a big mothership, but there's no, aerial kind of combat. And it's a shame, because that certainly was the strongest element in regards to the special effects. But again, the combat just seems a little weird, and there's a confrontation with Richard Grieco and this alien, and it's just awkwardly long, where this alien is slowly kind of putting his hand towards Richard Grieco, and it's just like, oh, I mean, there's a reason why it's maybe a little bit protracted, but it just is awkwardly long. And they're like slugmen at the end of the day, these aliens. They're just so slow. And yes, okay, it's a B movie at the end of the day. This is not going to win any awards for dialogue. Like I said, it is quite fun having this kind of this 90s macho-esque aesthetic, but ultimately it's very, very kind of cheesy. Characters are not particularly kind of well developed and don't really kind of go anything past kind of stereotypes. I still do enjoy some of the characters, to be honest with you, for a kind of 90s-esque kind of B-movie science fiction film. But I feel like this movie may be critiqued for real depth and a kind of like, and it's certainly not trying to do that, to be honest. But nonetheless, the characters are really just kind of a bunch of kind of tropes and cliches and stuff like that, to be brutally honest with you. So the movie comes across as being watchable, but pretty average on a kind of a B-movie scale. I did enjoy some aspects of this movie, and like I've said, I was very impressed with some of the kind of the technical aspects, and the scope of this film as well was impressive to see. But I feel it's let down by some poor action sequences and some ill thought out aliens and stuff like that, which makes it not a particularly thrilling movie. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.